Hello friends and fellow VEDSs, and welcome back to VEDS. On my way home today, I was thinking over this idea of your favorite characters, who your favorite characters are, and more specifically the archetypes that those characters fit into. Because there are a lot of reasons that someone could be your favorite character. It could be that you read that story at a particular time in your life. It could be that there was a performance of that character that you really enjoyed. Or it could be that the archetype that character fulfills appeals to you in some way. And I think it's an interesting exercise to try to take these archetypes and find your favorite characters within. So for example, old mentor characters. I love old mentor characters. They are my favorite archetype. Your Uncle Irohs, your Gandalfs, those type of characters. And my favorite of those, and my favorite character in just all of fiction in general, is Yoda. And it's interesting, how does Yoda fit into that archetype in a way that appeals to me so much? Because part of it is also like, he's in Star Wars. It's not a surprise that my favorite character comes from Star Wars. But what about Yoda works for me? And I think it's because when you first see him in Empire Strikes Back, there's a bait and switch. He's not revealing his true self to Luke. He wants to kind of test Luke out and challenge Luke's expectations and the viewer's expectations about what a Jedi looks like. He only really comes around to Luke. He only kind of stops pranking him and being an old crazy swamp muppet when Obi-Wan comes in. I just love that. There's so much I love about Yoda, but I think that in particular, that bait and switch, that kind of challenging where you think wisdom comes from, is one of the really key things about that character. Other archetypes, when you have heroes, you kind of can divide them into multiple different types, but I think two in particular, you can have more aspirational heroes and more relatable heroes. My favorite aspirational hero, and he's been a character who I've grown only more fond of as time has gone on, as I've grown up, is Superman. Superman is the ideal. It's that line from Superman the movie, they will run and they will stumble, but someday they will meet you in the sun. And it's not that Superman is necessarily a perfect character. It's his ability to get there. DC superheroes in particular are painted with very broad brushes sometimes, and I think that can be somewhat unappealing to some people, but I really like it. It's very mythological to me. It boils the character down into not just plot purpose, but like, what is their key motivator? Meanwhile, you have relatable heroes or more domestic heroes. Domestic doesn't have to mean that they aren't involved in big superhero shenanigans or hero shenanigans. Spider-Man could very easily be called this because most of his problems don't just arise from the fact that he has to fight mutated scientists, but also because he has financial problems. He has problems at school. He has romantic problems. But my favorite relatable hero isn't Spider-Man. It's Kiki from Kiki's Delivery Service, a movie I talk about nonstop. There's so much that you can read into Kiki. She is a young witch who gets sent off to kind of do a residency in a town, but she's bad at magic. All she can really do is fly. But she perseveres. She makes a delivery business out of this, but she runs into some trouble. A very popular reading of it now is kind of reading it as a millennial burnout story. And the way I read it is this idea of not living up to your own expectations. And I feel like because you can read it so many different ways, just goes to show how relatable Kiki is. But she's also kind of an aspirational character because by the end of the movie, she has overcome these challenges. You've also got the lawful good villain. That's a great one. The villain who won't do anything illegal, but is going to get in your way anyway. The best version of this is Javert, right? Because Javert has a very stark morality, a very strict code of ethics. And you can kind of understand where he's coming from, but there's just one key piece that's missing. He's all about justice, but he has no concept of what grace is. And because of that, he's unable to get to the end of Les Mis, which is a story about grace and rehabilitation. He is going to be stuck as the antagonist to Jean Valjean. It's such a fascinating journey. Very juicy character. You got the scoundrel with the heart of gold. There's a lot of great characters who fit into that, but I love Rick from Casablanca. Even in the early movie, before he kind of shows his heart of gold, he makes all these small decisions that kind of shows that he's not as bad of a guy as he wants you to think. Humphrey Bogart's perfect casting for that because he already has this gruff exterior. And then you've got like the animal sidekick, the character who's barely a character. Like, they have personality and they add some flavor to the story. They don't speak, they don't have a lot of agency. A lot of Disney sidekicks are like that. My favorite comes from the X-Men, unsurprisingly. It's a Lockheed. A friend of mine recently gave me a little action figure of Kitty Pryde that Lockheed comes with. It's just kind of this weird thing where one day Kitty Pryde finds a dragon, and then the dragon sticks with her for the next 30, 40 years of comics. He's a constant presence. He doesn't necessarily do much. Like occasionally he'll breathe fire or help Kitty out with something, but really he's more of a cat than a dragon. This is my favorite panel of Lockheed, and just my favorite panel in comics in general. He's just sitting on Magic's head, just like a cat. I love him. I love little Lockheed. Anyway, I'm gonna wrap it up there, and I'm curious about what character archetypes really appeal to you and what characters fit into those. There are a ton more that I didn't get into. The eyes-in character, the scrappy character who always has something going against them. So I'm curious what archetypes appeal to you and what are the characters that fit into those archetypes. Friends and fellow VEDSs, I will see you tomorrow.